Welcome villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I am your guide, KAGE, the creator of all the what-ifs you see on this channel, with your suggestion of course. I hope you like the video we have today. Please comment video ideas, and subscribe if you're new. Before we begin, here are the shoutouts for today. Thank you all for commenting on my videos. Today we have, What If Naruto Was in Legend of Korra, Part 1. I've worked hard on it, and I'm still working hard on Part 4 of What If Naruto Was Sent to Transformers, which hopefully will be coming out next week. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Part 1, The Calamity Reawakens. The sound of rushing wind filled the ancient training grounds, echoing against stone walls weathered by centuries of use. A dark-skinned girl, dressed in the traditional robes of an air nomad, stood at the edge of the area. Her sky-blue eyes were sharp with determination, though a flicker of uncertainty danced beneath their surface. She crossed her arms, weighing the challenge before her with the weight of her lineage and purpose. Her hair, tied into a neat ponytail, whipped lightly in the breeze, but with a flick of her wrist, she tossed it back, as if casting aside her hesitation. Before her stood an imposing mechanism, a towering construct of spinning fans. Each intricately carved with swirling air patterns and the sacred symbol of the air nomads. The fans spun with a relentless rhythm, creating an unending torrent of wind that seemed to breathe life into the air itself. The girl inhaled deeply, steadying her nerves, and dropped into a low, ready stance. The mechanism's power hummed in her ears, the sound growing louder as the fans spun faster. With one last glance at the obstacle, she charged forward, her bare feet skimming over the stone ground. The first fan spun toward her with impossible speed, and in an instant, her confidence wavered. Confusion replaced her determination as the fan struck her side with a resounding whack. She stumbled, her momentum throwing her toward the next fan. "Don't force it," came a calm, childish voice, carrying the gentle but unheard guidance. The words echoed across the arena, their source unseen. The girl barely had time to react before the second fan struck her shoulder, launching her toward the third. She yelped, disoriented as the relentless rhythm of the mechanism overtook her. "Feel the wind," a second voice instructed, this one younger and laced with curiosity, as if discovering the world for the first time. Another thud followed as she collided with yet another fan, her body spinning wildly through the air. The wind carried her like a leaf caught in a storm, each blow sending her into the path of the next fan. "Be the leaf," came a final voice, louder and more spirited than the others. It carried an exuberance that almost mocked her struggle, as though the speaker found joy in the chaos. The girl groaned, battered and bruised as the spinning fans continued their merciless assault. Her cries were drowned out by the cacophony of slaps and smacks as she ricocheted between them like a ragdoll caught in a tornado. Each strike came faster, the rhythm building to a crescendo until, with one final crack, the fans spit her out the same way she had entered. She landed unceremoniously in a heap, gasping for air as the spinning mechanism slowed behind her. The voices fell silent for a moment, leaving only the sound of her labored breathing and the gentle rustle of wind around her. Short time skip. The girl now stood before a tall tree, her teeth gritted and eyes narrowed with irritation. In her hand, she held a picture of Lin Beifong, glaring at it as if her sheer frustration could burn it to ash. This was Korra, the Avatar. A being meant to bridge the gap between the spirit world and humanity, tasked with mastering all four elements to maintain balance. From an early age, Korra was a bending prodigy, effortlessly mastering water, earth, and fire by the time she was just 4 years old. Yet, despite her natural talent, she had one glaring shortcoming: airbending. That very inability had been the source of her earlier torment. She had come to Air Temple Island under the guidance of Tenzen, the only airbending master alive. Tenzen, the son of Aang, the previous avatar, was part of an effort to rebuild the nearly extinct air nomad culture after the race was decimated in the 100-Year War. Together with his 3 airbending children, he was the only teacher capable of helping Korra unlock the secrets of the elusive art. For Korra, Air Temple Island was both a haven and a battleground. Located just south of Republic City, it was the ideal place to focus her training. But convincing Tenzen to let her stay had been no small feat now that she was here though. It felt like every attempt at airbending brought her nothing but failure. Airbending, she muttered under her breath, clenching her fists as she focused. Standing under the tree's shade, she extended her hands, her brow furrowing in deep concentration. With a growl of frustration, she strained, trying to will the air around her to move. Nothing, not even the faintest gust. Damn it, she shouted, her voice echoing through the quiet grove. Korra exhaled sharply, forcing herself to release her frustration. Her eyes, though still burning with annoyance, softened slightly as she shook her head and let her arms fall to her sides. Airbending wasn't just difficult, it felt impossible. Adjusting her attire, her usual water tribe outfit, she decided she needed a break. All the training, all the failure, all the expectations, it was too much. She wasn't used to this, bending always came naturally to her, so why didn't airbending? It gnawed at her, an itch she couldn't scratch, a puzzle she couldn't solve. She let her legs carry her as she walked, eyes downcast, her mind too clouded with thoughts to care where she was going. She closed her eyes, trying to drown out her frustration. When she opened them, she realized the scenery had changed. Korra stopped, her brow furrowing in confusion. She hadn't left the island, but somehow, she'd wandered into a part of the island that felt entirely different. The air was heavy, the sunlight dimmed by the overgrowth that seemed to close in around her. "What is this place?" she muttered, taking a cautious step forward. The path before her was wild and unkempt, as if no one had ventured here in years. Overgrown trees loomed above, their branches intact but infested with half-dead leaves that rustled faintly in the breeze. Korra stepped forward, intrigue replacing her earlier annoyance. She let her hand trail along the crumbling stone wall beside her, its rough surface cool beneath her fingers. The faint sound of her footsteps echoed in the stillness, the moss beneath her boots muffling her steps. As she moved deeper into the overgrowth, the air seemed to shift, heavier and more charged. The faint scent of damp earth and something metallic reached her nose, and a strange sense of unease settled over her. But Korra pressed on, her curiosity outweighing her apprehension. After a few minutes of navigating the tangled path, she came to a sudden stop. Before her stood what looked like an ancient shrine, half buried by time and nature. Vines snaked up its cracked stone exterior, and moss clung to its surface in patches. A faint glow emanated from the structure's base, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. "What's this?" Korra muttered to herself, her eyes narrowing as she stepped closer. She brushed aside some hanging vines to get a better look. The shrine was small but intricate, its design unlike anything she'd seen before. Strange symbols were etched into the stone, their meaning lost to time, and at the center was a circular seal that seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim light. Korra crouched down, examining the seal with interest, an airbender relic, she wondered aloud, her fingers brushing against the edge of the glowing symbol. But as her fingertips made contact, the glow intensified, and a sudden rush of wind burst from the shrine, knocking her back. She landed on her back with a grunt, her hair whipping around her face as the wind swirled violently. The once dormant seal now pulsed with a blinding light, and cracks began to spiderweb across its surface. "What the?" Korra scrambled to her feet, shielding her face from the wind. The light grew brighter, and the ground beneath her trembled. With a deafening crack, the seal shattered, releasing a wave of energy that sent Korra stumbling backward. From within the shrine, a figure began to emerge. At first, it was indistinct, a mass of glowing energy, but as the light faded, it took shape. A young man with spiky blonde hair and in black and orange sleeveless jacket, along black pants, weird sandals and a black headband with a metal plate on it. His blue eyes slowly opening as if waking from a long sleep, he stepped forward not long after. Korra stared in disbelief, her heart pounding. "Who are you?" she asked slowly, her voice cautious as she took in the young man's strange appearance. The blonde-haired boy blinked, his piercing blue eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings before briefly landing on her. His expression was unreadable. A mix of confusion and wariness. Without a word, he turned away, his gaze wandering as if searching for something just beyond sight. His movements were calm yet deliberate, each step echoing softly against the moss-covered ground. Korra's brow furrowed, a flicker of irritation crossing her face. "Hey," she called out, her tone sharper, "I'm talking to you." The boy didn't react, his blank face still tilted slightly upward as he observed the canopy of half-dead leaves above. It was as if she weren't even there. Korra clenched her fists, her annoyance growing. "All right, that's it," she said, stepping closer and planting herself firmly in front of him. "I don't know who you are or why you were in some ancient shrine, but you're gonna answer me." The boy finally stopped, his gaze dropping to meet hers. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the faint rustle of the wind through the overgrowth. Then, unexpectedly, he smirked. "You're kind of loud, aren't you?" Korra's jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" The boy raised a hand, waving dismissively as he turned his attention to the shattered remains of the shrine behind her. "I heard you the first time, just needed a second to get my bearings." He moved past her with casual ease, crouching down to examine the fragments of the broken seal. His fingers brushed over the glowing cracks, a thoughtful expression replacing his earlier blankness. "Looks like someone woke me up," he said, his voice calm yet carrying enough weight for Korra to hear. His gaze shifted briefly to her, studying her with quiet intensity. His voice then dropped to a murmur. "That energy of hers, she is his reincarnation, isn't she? Which mean?" He paused, his expression unreadable as his tone softened. "It's been at least 200 years, probably much longer." Korra didn't hear more than his first sentence, his murmurs and whispers too quick and too low for her to place. Korra crossed her arms, her patience wearing thin. "Woke you up? Were you sealed away in that thing?" The boy glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, something like that," he said, brushing some dust off his sleeve. "All you need to know is it's been a while," he said almost silently. "I'm Naruto," he said with a smile, one that just made Korra a bit more suspicious. Korra blinked, momentarily thrown off by his casual introduction. "I'm Korra," she said after a beat, her tone still edged with suspicion. "The Avatar." Naruto's expression shifted, his smirk fading as he straightened up. He studied her for a moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "The Avatar, huh?" he said, his voice quieter now. "Guess I was right, but I'm also guessing a lot more has changed than just that." Korra tilted her head, confused by his sudden shift in demeanor. "What do you mean, and why were you sealed away?" Naruto let out a small chuckle, though there was no humor in it. "That's a long story, one that I do not feel like explaining." Korra frowned, her earlier irritation growing just a bit with curiosity. "So, what are you, some kind of spirit, or a bender?" Naruto's smirk returned, but this time it was softer. Almost wistful. "I'm complicated, let's leave it at that for now." The blonde then tried to walk away, his calm demeanor almost sneaking right past the Avatar without a thought. But before Naruto could get any further, the girl grabbed his arm, her eyes narrowing when he turned to look at her. "You aren't going anywhere, you have to answer my questions, especially with you being on Air Temple Island for who knows how long. I'm taking you to Tenzen." The blonde paused, glancing down at the hand gripping his arm. His expression remained neutral, though there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. He studied her for a moment before sighing softly. "I don't know who this Tenzen is." Naruto replied evenly, his voice calm but carrying a subtle weight, "But I can tell you're not going to let this go, are you?" Korra's grip tightened slightly, her brow furrowing. "Not a chance. I don't know who you are or how you got here, but showing up in the middle of an abandoned area like this isn't exactly normal." Naruto tilted his head, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Fair enough, but dragging me around without explaining what's going on isn't exactly polite either." The comment caught Korra off guard, and she hesitated, her determined expression faltering. "Polite? You're the one who randomly appeared out of nowhere. I'm the one trying to figure out if pose a threat." Naruto chuckled softly, the sound low and almost disarming. "Fair point, all right, lead the way." Korra blinked, her grip loosening as she processed his words. "Wait, you're going to come quietly?" He gave a small nod. "Figured you're just trying to answer your questions, and keep everyone on the island safe, even if you're a bit rude." "That, and you've got the same energy as someone I used to know." Korra raised an eyebrow, intrigued but still wary. "Someone you used to know, who?" Naruto's smirk faded slightly, and his gaze turned distant. "A friend, from a long time ago." Sensing the shift in his tone, Korra decided not to press further. She released his arm but kept a close eye on him. "Fine, let's go, but don't think for a second that I'm letting my guard down around you." Naruto nodded, falling into step beside her. "Yes ma'am," he said quickly, although his voice let off something else as he spoke. The subtle challenge in his tone made Korra glance at him sideways. There was something about this guy, calm, confident, and entirely unreadable, that made her both annoyed and curious. As they walked, Korra led the way toward the main part of the island. The overgrown path gradually giving way to the well-maintained trails of Air Temple Island. She couldn't help but steal glances at Naruto, trying to piece together the mystery of who he was and why he was here. She mainly looked at his weird get-up, trying to find for herself what kind of bender he was, but his clothes were too different from anything she had seen to put anything together, and the way he looked confused her even more as she had never seen such bright blonde hair. Korra frowned, her curiosity growing even more. "You're definitely not from around here, are you?" Naruto's lips twitched into a faint smile. "You could say that." Korra's frown only grew, frustration lining her eyes as she quickly noted something about the blonde. He wasn't answering any of her questions seriously. He was hiding and giving vague statements that could well mean anything from him being a threat to a kid in a teen's body. The two's eyes suddenly locked, making Korra look away in embarrassment, while Naruto just gave a smile. "You want to ask more questions, don't you?" states the blonde, his teasing tone getting the best of Korra. She almost sputtered, but she was quickly able to calm herself. "Yeah, I want to ask more questions, but you haven't given a serious answer for any of the first ones. So what's the point?" Naruto gave another chuckle, small amusement written on his face. This only helped to make Korra a bit more annoyed than she already was. Silence soon grew between the two, one that allowed them to walk all the way to the front of the island, near the entrance of Tenzen's home. Naruto broke the silence first, his voice carrying curiosity. "You're persistent, I'll give you that. That at least makes me want to say, I'm not used to the whole questioning thing, haven't been for quite a while." Korra raised an eyebrow, folding her arms tightly. "A while, that's the best you've got?" "You're definitely hiding something, and I don't think I'm gonna let it slide. So how about you save us both the trouble and just explain who you are?" Naruto tilted his head slightly, his gaze softening, only for a mischievous smile to fall over his expression. how about, maybe? Korra gritted her teeth in frustration. What's so hard about explaining yourself? All I really need to know is if you're dangerous or not, for my standards that is. Naruto's expression shifted for a moment, a flicker of seriousness crossing his face. Dangerous, maybe, but not to you, I can promise that much. Korra studied him, unsure whether to feel reassured or even more suspicious. Before she could reply, a shadow passed over them, and a familiar voice called out, "Korra, what's going on here?" Korra and Naruto turned to see Tenzen approaching, his formal posture and sharp gaze making it clear he wasn't pleased with the scene in front of him. His robe swayed in the wind as he came to a stop, looking between the avatar and the unfamiliar blonde with clear suspicion. "And who is this?" Tenzen asked, his tone calm but edged with authority. Naruto took one look at the older man and gave a small, casual wave, "Just someone who woke up in the wrong time." Tenzen's eyes narrowed as he turned to Korra. "What does he mean by that? Where did you find him?" Korra gave a tired sigh, her hand massaging her forehead before she turned back to Tenzen. "Your guess is as good as mine," she said absently before letting her arm drop. "Found him in this weird old shrine at the back of the island. He was sealed inside." Tenzen's expression darkened slightly, his tone cautious. "Sealed, that doesn't sound promising, and to think, I didn't even know we had a shrine in the back," he said, stroking his beard in thought. After a moment of contemplation, his gaze shifted back to Korra, his eyes narrowing. "Regardless, there's usually a reason someone, or something, is sealed away. Why would you open the shrine without informing me first?" Korra frowned, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "It's not like I meant to unseal him. I didn't even know it was a seal." Before the argument could escalate, Naruto raised a hand, drawing their attention. Both Tenzen and Korra turned to him, almost forgetting that he was still standing there. "Look, before this turns into a blame game," Naruto began, his tone calm but slightly dismissive, "I'm still trying to wrap my head around where I even am, not that it matters too much, but I'd rather we speed this up so I can go find somewhere quiet to relax." Tenzen's sharp gaze locked onto Naruto, his expression unreadable as he studied the blonde. "I'm afraid it's not that simple. If what Korra has said about you is true, and you've been sealed away, it would be reckless to let you wander freely without understanding who you are or why you were sealed in the first place. Until I'm confident you pose no threat to Air Temple Island or Republic City, you cannot leave." Naruto sighed, rubbing the back of his head. "Figured you'd say something like that. Fine, ask your questions, just don't expect too many clear answers, some things are better left in the past." Tenzen's brow furrowed at Naruto's cryptic response, but he gave a curt nod. "Very well, we'll continue this discussion in my study. Korra, I'd like you to remain near the meditation hall. I can handle this on my own, and with his cooperation, this should be resolved quickly." Korra frowned, crossing her arms. "Seriously, you're just going to send me away? I'm the one who found him." "And that's precisely why you should stay nearby," Tenzen replied firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "This situation requires a measured approach, not impulse." Naruto let out a small chuckle, drawing their attention. "You two have quite the dynamic," he remarked with a slight smirk. Tenzen's eye twitched at the casual remark, but he chose not to dignify it with a response. Instead, he turned and began walking toward the study, gesturing for Naruto to follow. As they walked, Korra stood behind, her gaze shifting between the two as they disappeared down the corridor. Inside the study, the atmosphere was tense. Tenzen closed the door, his sharp gaze fixed on Naruto, who casually leaned against a wall, seemingly unbothered by the situation. "Let's start with the basics," Tenzen said, his tone calm but firm. "Who are you, and why were you sealed away?" Naruto tilted his head, considering the question. "Name's Naruto. I was sealed because a certain situation got a bit out of hand. it was safer for me, and others, if I was put on pause. Tenzen's eyes narrowed. That's a very vague explanation. Naruto gave a sly smirk, similar to the one he gave to Korra, making Tenzen wonder in what the blonde would say next. Well, it's not really on my list to explain my whole life after just being unsealed. Learn the hard way to not show all your cards at once. Tenzen stroked his beard, his expression contemplative. He slowly took in the words of the blonde, testing each one and trying to find a simple meaning. From what the airbender could tell, the boy had been through something, maybe even multiple tragic events, so instead of pushing on, the man decided to pose his next question. Do you have any ill intent toward this island or Republic City? Naruto straightened, his expression softening slightly. No, I don't. I just woke up. I wouldn't even have the time to be mad at a place that I don't even recognize. What are you? Do you exist as a spirit, or are you just a normal person? Possibly a bender? Tenzen fired his next question without a second thought, questioning the blonde's abilities as soon as he could. Naruto gave a smile, unnerving the airbender before the blonde gave a chuckle. You know, your questions are very similar to Korra's. Seems like the avatar learns a lot from her sensei. Tenzen's eyes narrowed, suspicion crossing his eyes as he waited for his question to be answered. Clearly realizing this, Naruto gave a quick sigh. People must have lost their sense of humor in this time, he said under his breath. I'm not a spirit or a bender, but I'm not normal either. I can't explain more than that. The man nodded. He hadn't felt like wasting time, not at the moment or in any part of his life. Even if the boy said he wasn't a threat, Tenzen wanted to make himself completely sure. How long do you suspect you were in there, and who sealed you? This question made Naruto pause, and noticeably so. Tenzen's eyes remained fixed on Naruto as the silence stretched. The blonde's calm demeanor shifted slightly, his lips pressing into a thin line as he considered how to respond. Let's say a long time, Naruto finally said, his tone quiet, almost reflective. Long enough for everything I once knew to be gone. Tenzen frowned, the weight of that statement sinking in. This didn't stop him from noticing how the boy hadn't spoke of who sealed him. Narrowing his eyes, Tenzen gestured him to go on before speaking. And the one who sealed you? He asked, almost blatantly so. Naruto's gaze turned distant, as if recalling a memory long buried. It was clear to see on the blonde's face that it wasn't something he wanted to remember, at least it was for Tenzen. As the last master of airbending, he had to deal with situations like this before. However, he didn't like the sudden quiet. It put a weight on his shoulders that he hadn't felt in a while. It made him want to call the metal benders to take him in for questioning, but he wouldn't do so, not yet at least. Finally, Naruto began to speak, his voice low and strained. It was someone I trusted, someone who had to make a hard choice to protect the world. His voice carried a hint of melancholy, but his expression remained neutral. The airbender stroked his beard, his mind turning over Naruto's words. Though vague, the blonde's responses hinted at something deeper, and even if Tenzen wanted to uncover the story, it was clear that he couldn't push on. Very well, Tenzen said carefully, but know this, your presence here is unexpected, and I will not risk the safety of this island or the world. For now you'll be watched closely, and I expect you to be forthright moving forward. Naruto smirked faintly, the somberness in his expression melting away. Fair enough, I'd probably do the same in your shoes. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Korra's voice called out, laced with impatience. Hey, are you done in there? What's going on? Tenzen sighed, glancing at Naruto. We'll continue this later. I will get a guard to take you to your new quarters, as well as explain to Korra our new guest. Naruto shrugged, following Tenzen to the door. As they stepped out to meet Korra, the avatar was leaning against the wall, arms crossed and a scowl on her face. "Well," she demanded, "what's the verdict?" Tenzen glanced at Naruto before addressing Korra. "For now, he stays on the island under supervision. I will monitor him and determine his intentions as we go." Korra raised an eyebrow at Naruto, who gave her a lazy smile. "Looks like I'm your new roommate," he said with a teasing tone. Korra groaned, throwing her hands up. "Great, just what I needed, another mystery to deal with." Naruto just gave a small chuckle, before being taken towards his room by a guard. And as he left, Korra kept her gaze on him, trying and failing to understand how he appeared and was permitted to stay in just one meeting. POV switch. A certain blonde now rested on a sturdy branch of an old tree, the weathered bark pressing lightly against his back as he leaned against the trunk. The gentle sway of the tree and the rustle of its leaves were a rare source of comfort, and as he closed his eyes, his mind drifted through fragments of memories. It was all he could do at the moment, all he had to occupy himself in this strange, unfamiliar world. Tenzen had explained the state of the world to him, its recent history, and its present struggles. While Naruto had kept his expression calm and detached during the explanation, the weight of it all lingered in the back of his mind. Worry crept in for the people of this planet. Even if he didn't show it outwardly. He was a shinobi, a ninja meant to protect, fight, and, if necessary, kill. And yet, he had been sealed away, cast into the void of time, left to be forgotten until the day someone finally broke the seal. This wasn't his first time experiencing such isolation. He had known of benders before his first sealing, understood the changes that time and fate had hidden from him. The first time he had been unsealed, it had been by someone who guided him through the world's strange new ways, someone he had trusted. That same person had been the one to reseal him, ensuring the world was safe from the unintended consequences of his growing power. But now, as he sat in the quiet solitude of the tree, it was painfully clear, this time, there was no one. No guide, no familiar face, just him, left to navigate a world that had changed beyond recognition. His hand absently brushed over the bark beside him, grounding himself as the weight of the past pressed against the uncertainty of the present. Despite everything, a small smirk crossed his lips. He had survived this before. He would figure it out again. Before Naruto could delve any deeper into his thoughts, reminiscing about his time with Team 7 and the events that led to his ultimate sealing, a small but loud voice pulled him back to the present. "Hey, are you Naruto?" Turning his head toward the speaker, Naruto found himself looking at a small boy who he assumed was one of Tenzen's children, the youngest, by the looks of it. With a faint smile, Naruto replied, "That'd be yours truly, who's asking?" The boy grinned widely, a toothy expression of excitement, before using a burst of air bending to propel himself up into the tree. He landed across from Naruto, wobbling precariously for a few moments before managing to stabilize himself. "I'm Milo, Dad sent me to get you." His loud, energetic tone matched the enthusiasm in his expression, almost distracting Naruto from the actual message. Naruto raised an eyebrow, giving the boy a curious look. "What does Tenzen want? I'm pretty sure we talked enough yesterday." Milo shrugged casually, digging into his nose and flicking away a booger without a second thought. Naruto's calm demeanor faltered for a split second, his lips twitching as he resisted the urge to grimace. "Oh right," Milo exclaimed, as if suddenly remembering the rest of his message. "He said something about you helping Korra with her air bending, but that's all he said." Naruto sighed, leaning back against the tree. He had been hoping for a bit more time to relax and figure out how he'd spend the rest of his time now that he was unsealed, especially after he was eventually allowed to leave the island. Still, he supposed it wasn't the worst way to pass the time. Even if he wasn't a bender, he might be able to offer some insight. "Well, I guess I'd better not keep him waiting," Naruto muttered to himself before glancing back at Milo. Alright, lead the way, kid. Milo grinned again, hopping off the branch and gliding to the ground with ease. Naruto followed, stretching his arms as he prepared for whatever Tenzen had planned for him. As the two walked, Naruto couldn't help but notice how much Milo reminded him of his younger self. There was a certain familiarity in the boy's free-spirited energy, hyperactive nature, and unapologetically knuckle-headed attitude. It brought a faint smile to his face, though he didn't let it linger long. Milo darted ahead, his boundless enthusiasm evident in every movement. "You're pretty cool for someone Dad's all suspicious about," he said suddenly, glancing over his shoulder at Naruto. "I mean, you're not that weird." "Not yet, anyway." Naruto chuckled softly at the boy's bluntness. "Thanks, I think I'll try not to get any weirder." Milo laughed, clearly entertained by the response, before launching himself into a quick series of airbending flips. "You're funny." "Good to know," Naruto replied with a smirk, watching as the boy twisted and turned through the air. It was hard not to see a bit of himself in the kid's playful antics. As they approached the meditation hall, the familiar figure of Tenzen came into view, standing near Korra, who looked like she was trying very hard to appear patient. She glanced up at Naruto and Milo's arrival, her arms crossed and an eyebrow raised. "Finally," Korra muttered, her tone carrying a hint of exasperation. "Took you long enough. What were you two doing, climbing trees?" "Actually, yeah," Milo said proudly before Naruto could respond. Tenzen gave his son a disapproving look but said nothing, instead turning his attention to Naruto. "Thank you for coming. I thought it might be beneficial for you to observe Korra's airbending practice today. Perhaps you could provide a unique perspective." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "You want me to teach her airbending? Don't know if you remember, but I still can't bend, not my thing." "Not to teach," Tenzen clarified, his tone calm but firm. "To observe, perhaps your unique abilities and perspective could offer insight into how Korra might refine her techniques." Korra frowned, clearly skeptical. "What's he supposed to do, stand there and tell me I'm doing it wrong?" Naruto shrugged nonchalantly, tucking his hands behind his head. "I mean, if that's what you want, I can give it a shot, but don't cry if I'm too honest." Korra rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath. Tenzen, however, stepped forward, his expression serious. "Korra, focus. Naruto is here to help, even if in an unconventional way. You'd do well to take this seriously." Naruto sighed internally, sensing a long day ahead. "Alright, Avatar," he said with a smirk, a glint of intrigue in his eyes, "let's see what you've got." Tenzen turned to his eldest daughter, Jinora, gesturing for her to activate the fans. She nodded with a calm demeanor and extended her arms, bending a focused gust of wind to start them up. Naruto raised an eyebrow, quietly impressed by the precision of her technique. The control she demonstrated was notable, even for something seemingly simple. While he wasn't an airbender himself, the display piqued his curiosity. His first unsealing had been during a time when bending was still new to him, leaving him uncertain about what was standard and what was exceptional. Korra stepped forward, her face set with determination. She inhaled deeply, positioning herself in front of the spinning fans. Her body tensed as she prepared to navigate through the obstacle course that had proven frustratingly difficult the previous day. Naruto leaned casually against a tree, his arms crossed, watching her every move. He could already tell by her posture and energy that she was tense, possibly overthinking her movements. "Relax, Avatar," he called out, his voice calm but teasing. "It's air, it's supposed to flow. If you fight it, you're just going to get smacked around." Korra turned her head slightly, her frown deepening at his unsolicited advice. "You want to do this instead," she shot back, her tone laced with irritation. Naruto chuckled softly, shaking his head, "Not my thing, but I'll enjoy the show." With a roll of her eyes, Korra took another breath and dove into the spinning fans. At first, her movements were cautious, calculated, and rigid. She managed to dodge a few of the fans, but as Naruto had warned, her tension worked against her. A sharp gust sent one fan swinging faster than expected, smacking her squarely in the shoulder and sending her stumbling back with a loud thwack. Naruto couldn't hold back a low chuckle this time. "Told you," he said with a smirk, his tone light but teasing. Korra glared at him, rubbing her shoulder. Yeah, laugh it up, blondie." Tenzen, however, sighed, clearly unamused. "This isn't a joke, Naruto," he admonished, though his tone was more exasperated than angry. Naruto raised a hand defensively. "Hey, just offering some real-time feedback. She'll get it eventually, or get hit a few more times. It's a pretty simple solution to a simple problem." Korra rolled her eyes again but didn't retort this time. She repositioned herself, stealing a glance at Naruto, who now looked slightly more serious. The girl had to stop herself from yelling at the blonde, but instead she had a better idea, something that would give her a few laughs. "If it's such a simple solution, how about you do it then?" Naruto raised an eyebrow at Korra's challenge, a smirk tugging at the corners of his lips. He wasn't looking to make a spectacle of himself, but she was practically daring him. "Well, since you asked so nicely," he replied, his voice light but with an undertone of amusement. He stepped forward, positioning himself in front of the massive fans as though it was just another easy task. Korra folded her arms, watching him with skepticism, half expecting him to fail or make a fool of himself. It would be hard not to laugh if he did. Tenzen, on the other hand, paused for a moment. He was tempted to stop the blonde, but something in Naruto's demeanor made him want to see what he could do. Naruto tossed his shirt and jacket to the floor with a quick flick, earning an unamused deadpan from Tenzen. Korra, however, couldn't help but notice his well-defined, toned physique, though she quickly turned her attention away, trying to hide a faint blush creeping onto her cheeks. Naruto closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, his expression softening as he focused, tuning out the noise around him. Despite his playful nature, he was always serious when it came to anything physical, even if this wasn't exactly his area of expertise. With a small, confident shrug, he gestured to Tenzen, signaling that he was ready. Jinora, watching from the side, glanced between her father and the blonde with uncertainty, unsure whether she should begin the fans. Tenzen gave a short nod, and Jinora activated the fans, the mighty wind whirring them to life. Naruto smiled briefly before zoning in again, preparing for the challenge. With a quick step, he leaped into the spinning chaos of the fans, moving swiftly through the gusts of wind. Korra expected him to be thrown off balance, but instead, he wove his way through the fierce wind with ease, emerging on the other side as if he'd been dancing with it all along. Korra blinked, her initial skepticism replaced by surprise. She had expected something chaotic or reckless, but his movements were smooth, calculated, and remarkably controlled. Naruto glanced back at her, a playful gleam in his eyes. "See, told you it was simple." Korra rolled her eyes, her irritation flaring up again. "Just leave already," she muttered, though her voice lacked its usual bite. "I don't need you showing off, I already know I can't do it." Naruto gave one last playful glance over his shoulder at Korra, his smirk widening as he sensed the mix of annoyance and contemplation brewing within her. "Well, I guess that's enough for today," he said nonchalantly, stretching his arms as he began to turn away. "You've got this, just remember to stay focused next time, you'll get it." Korra barely acknowledged his words, still staring at the now still fans. her mind buzzing with the strange interaction. She didn't know why, but part of her felt like he was more than just some random person who was sealed in a shrine. "Whatever, just go already," she muttered, her annoyance still lingering, though with less intensity than before. Naruto chuckled under his breath, clearly not offended, as he began walking away from the group. He had his own path to follow, one that didn't involve lingering here too long. Even though he had done his part, he knew there were more things he needed to figure out. After all, just because he could help someone with airbending didn't mean he was sticking around for the long haul. As he passed Tenzen, the airbender gave him one last assessing look. His suspicions still not fully quelled. But Tenzen said nothing as Naruto made his way toward the exit of the training area. Naruto didn't need permission or a long discussion, he just knew when it was time to step away. "I'll be around if you need me," Naruto called over his shoulder without looking back, before disappearing into the distance, leaving the group in silence. For the rest of the day, Naruto kept to himself, feeling no real need to interact with anyone else on the island. He spent most of his time lounging in quiet corners, appreciating the peace while it lasted. Occasionally, he noticed guards passing by, their eyes lingering on him for just a moment before they moved on. They didn't approach, and Naruto didn't bother acknowledging them, though he was well aware of their presence. His years of training made it second nature to sense when he was being watched. Finally, when night settled over the island, Naruto stirred with a soft yawn. A whole day of half-sleeping had completely thrown off his internal clock, and now, as the rest of the world rested, he was wide awake, and bored. He hopped out of the tree he had been resting in, landing lightly on the soft grass below. The stars above sparkled against the inky darkness of the night sky, their brilliance undimmed by city lights. For a moment, he stood in silence, taking it all in. The darkness held a familiar comfort for him, a shinobi's ally, its beauty often unnoticed in the chaos of his past missions. But as serene as the night was, it couldn't hold his attention for long. The stillness only reminded him of just how bored he was. Letting out a loud, exaggerated sigh, Naruto stared up at the sky, almost as if hoping the universe might answer. "Maybe if I make enough noise, something interesting will happen," he muttered to himself, his voice carrying softly through the night. It wasn't the first time he'd tried this tactic, and he figured, why not, it had worked before. A brief silence enveloped Naruto before he caught the faint sound of muffled talking in the distance. The speech had an almost mechanical tone, but he didn't care. Talking meant something was happening, and as long as it kept him entertained, he was willing to investigate. With a burst of speed, Naruto moved quickly, not at his full capacity, but far faster than any average person in this era could hope to match. He didn't want to cause a scene, at least not yet. When he arrived, disappointment immediately set in. Instead of finding something interesting, he saw two guards standing in an open area of the temple, their attention fixed on a radio. They were listening intently, their excitement evident, but it was all so dull. Koda earthbends a pillar in front of himself, blocking a turret of water from the away team. Zoro moves in to protect his teammate, and with a flare of fire, he knocks out the firebender on the away team, securing the win. "We'll see you all next time for our last match of the night." Naruto groaned quietly, tuning out the barrage of advertisements that followed. This was almost worse than boredom. The commentary hinted at an exciting sport, but it was over too quickly for him to fully grasp the action. He would have much preferred watching instead of listening to vague descriptions. He turned to leave with a huff, convinced there was no point in staying. But as he moved to climb onto a nearby rooftop, something caught his attention. A familiar presence stirred above him, and as Naruto leaped onto the roof, he found Korra sitting there, crouched in silence. Her eyes were fixed on the guards and their radio, a look of interest flickering across her face. Naruto smirked slightly, crossing his arms as he observed her for a moment. "Didn't peg you for the eavesdropping type," he teased, his voice low enough not to alert the guards. Korra jumped slightly, startled, before turning to glare at him. "What are you doing here?" she whispered harshly, though there was no real anger in her tone. "Could ask you the same thing," Naruto shot back, his grin widening. "Didn't think the mighty Avatar needed to sneak around just to catch a radio broadcast." Korra huffed, crossing her arms. "I like the sport, so what? It's not like there's much else to do around here at night." Naruto chuckled softly. "Fair enough, guess we're both stuck looking for something to kill the boredom." He sat down beside her, glancing at the radio in the distance. "So, what's the deal with this, some kind of bending sport?" Korra's expression shifted slightly, her interest rekindling as she explained, "Yeah, it's called pro bending. Teams of 3 compete using their bending skills, trying to knock each other off a platform. It's pretty fun to watch, well at least I think it is." Naruto raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Sounds like my kind of thing. Too bad they're just talking about it instead of showing it." Korra smirked. "You would enjoy it, and if you're not too scared, maybe you could try it sometime." Naruto snorted. "Scared, me? You must not know me very well yet, Avatar." The two sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the distant hum of the radio fading into the night. Despite the uneventful evening, Naruto felt a small flicker of contentment. Maybe this world wasn't so boring after all. The silence between them was broken by an idea sparking in Naruto's mind. Pro bending, a sport that turned bending into a competition. He couldn't deny it sounded intriguing. If it was as action-packed as Korra described, then watching a match might actually be worth his time. Naruto leaned back slightly, his smirk returning as he glanced at Korra. "So, this pro bending thing, you ever been to a match?" Korra blinked at the sudden question, then shook her head. "Not yet. Tenzen's not exactly a fan of the sport, and he's pretty strict about what I should focus on." Naruto snorted. "Of course he is, guy's a bit too uptight sometimes." He stretched his arms casually, his gaze shifting to the horizon. "Well, I say we change that, let's go see a match." Korra's eyes widened in surprise. "What, now? You're kidding, right? It's the middle of the night, and Tenzen would kill me if he found out." Naruto shrugged nonchalantly. "Come on, Avatar, live a little. You just said you've never been to one, and I'm curious to see what all the fuss is about. Besides, you don't strike me as the type to let a little rule-breaking stop you." Korra hesitated, biting her lip as she weighed the idea. She knew Tenzen wouldn't approve, but the thought of sneaking out to finally experience pro bending was tempting. "I don't know," she started, but Naruto cut her off with a sly grin. "Look, if you're too scared, I can go by myself," he teased, standing up and brushing the dust off his pants. "But it might actually help with your air bending." Korra raised an eyebrow, confusion written all over her face. "My air bending? What do you mean? How would sneaking off to watch a pro bending match help with that?" Naruto chuckled, his steps already carrying him toward the edge of the rooftop. He glanced back at her, his grin widening. He'd dangled the bait, now it was time to reel her in. "You're stiff, strong, sure, but too forceful. Air isn't about brute strength, it's about freedom. And judging from what you told me earlier, that's something you've been missing." Korra crossed her arms defensively, her expression skeptical but curious. "And you think watching a pro bending match is going to magically fix that?" Naruto shrugged, leaning casually against the rooftop edge. "Not magically, no, but it's a step. You can't understand freedom if you don't feel it, and if nothing else, it'll give you a different perspective. Plus," he added with a wink, "you get to hang out with me, and I make everything more fun." Korra rolled her eyes, but she couldn't completely suppress the small smile tugging at her lips. Fine, you're ridiculously annoying, you know that? Naruto laughed, motioning for her to follow. It's part of my charm. Now, come on before the guards notice we're gone. Reluctantly, Korra followed him, sneaking through the temple grounds as quietly as possible. The night air was cool, the stars above providing just enough light to guide their way. As they reached the outskirts of the temple, Korra whispered, "So, what's the plan? We still have to get across the water. I can't make an ice bridge, and Naga doesn't like new people riding her." Naruto smirked, glancing over his shoulder at her. "I have my ways," he said cryptically, his smirk faltering for a moment as he stared at the water. "By the way, who's Naga?" Korra grinned, her face lighting up with excitement. The brightness of her smile caught Naruto off guard. If it were any wider, he swore it could blind him. Before he could comment, a massive figure emerged from the shadows behind her. A gigantic creature, part polar bear and part dog, let out a loud snort, causing Naruto's eyes to widen in awe. "This is Naga," Korra said proudly, patting the creature's side with a smirk of her own as Naruto stared. Naruto blinked, his mind catching up as he remembered the strange hybrid animals of this era, like batworms and fox coyotes. The sight still managed to throw him off, even after everything else he'd seen. Korra climbed onto Naga's back with practiced ease and gestured for Naruto to join her. But before he could decide, Naga let out a low growl, eyeing the blonde suspiciously. Naruto chuckled nervously, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Yeah, I don't think she likes me much." Korra shrugged, "She's picky, guess you'll have to swim." "Swim," Naruto repeated, grinning as if she'd just challenged him. He hopped down toward the water, rolling his shoulders. "Nah, I've got this." Before Korra could respond, Naga launched into the water with a loud splash, her powerful strokes carrying them swiftly across the bay. Korra glanced back to see Naruto still standing on the shore, only to do a double take as she realized he was now running across the water's surface with ease, nearly halfway to Republic City. Korra's jaw dropped. "What the, how are you doing that?" she shouted, her voice echoing over the water. Naruto shot her a teasing look over his shoulder but said nothing, his pace steady as he reached the far shore before Naga. By the time Korra arrived, she was still staring at him in disbelief. "Okay, I get it now," Korra said, hopping off Naga with a grin. "You're a waterbender, aren't you? That's Bowyer did that, but that's got to be very advanced just walking on instead of launching yourself with it." Naruto blinked, caught off guard by her assumption. He let out a laugh, shaking his head. "Waterbender, nah, not even close." Korra frowned, confused. "Then how?" Naruto held up a hand, cutting her off with a sly grin. "Let's just say I've got my own tricks. You'll find out one day maybe." Korra narrowed her eyes, clearly frustrated but intrigued. She didn't push on with her questions, she just stayed silent, being annoyed with another mystery in her way. Even if the blonde denied it, Korra was convinced, Naruto had to be a waterbender. After realizing that Naruto wouldn't be much help navigating Republic City, she took the lead, guiding him toward the pro-bending arena. Unfortunately, neither of them had money for tickets, leaving sneaking in as their only option. Naruto's questionable skills made their entry easier than Korra expected. He led her through the halls, quietly searching for a way into the main arena. However, something caught Korra's eye, a set of open double doors revealing what looked like a training area. Intrigued, she pulled Naruto inside before he could protest. Naruto rubbed his arm, wincing. For someone who didn't look it, Korra had a surprisingly strong grip. He opened his mouth to make a remark, but the words died on his tongue when he saw her expression. Korra stood still, wide-eyed and open-mouthed, as she took in the room. It was a gym filled with weights, earth discs, nets, and bending equipment, all set up in a haphazard yet functional way. Despite the clutter, the space was empty of people, which Naruto considered a blessing. Getting caught here would be way worse than sneaking into the stands. Yet, as he watched Korra, his chest tightened. Her face glowed with an almost childlike wonder, as though she'd stepped into her dreamland. It was bittersweet. Naruto sighed softly. Sheltered. That's the word that came to mind. It wasn't her fault, but it hurt him to see how much she'd missed out on because of how protected she'd been as the Avatar. "You okay, Avatar?" Naruto asked, his voice low enough to avoid drawing attention but loud enough for her to hear. Korra turned to him, her expression softening as a grateful smile touched her lips. She nodded before walking toward a bench and picking up an earth disc. The disc had intricate designs, curved yet rough, like a carefully sculpted piece of art. Korra ran her fingers over the surface, her smile growing. "I've dreamed of coming here," she said softly. "When I first got to Republic City, this place felt so close, but Tenzen said I couldn't go to a game. And now," her voice trailed off as she glanced around the gym, "now I'm actually here." Her excitement returned in full force as she jumped to her feet, leaving the earth disc behind. She turned to Naruto, practically bouncing on her toes. "Come on, let's go to the game already." Before Naruto could answer, a gruff voice rang out, startling them both. "Hey!" They spun around, spotting an older, short, round man in a tank top with a towel slung over his shoulder. Sweat dripped from his face, indicating he'd been working out in another room. "What are you two doing in my gym?" he demanded, his tone suspicious. Naruto sighed, already resigning himself to being caught. He didn't feel like using any of his abilities, especially since Korra already thought he was a bender. Korra, however, panicked. We were just looking for the bathroom, got a little lost," she stammered, holding her hands up defensively. The man raised an unimpressed eyebrow, his lips curling into a smirk. "Really, that's the worst excuse I've ever heard. You kids sneak in here all the time to avoid paying for tickets. I'm calling security." Naruto groaned, facepalming at Korra's weak attempt to talk their way out of the situation. Just as things seemed about to escalate, a new voice broke through. "There you are." Everyone turned toward the source, a young man around Naruto's age, wearing a pro-bending uniform. His red suit was lined with green accents, and he held a matching helmet under one arm. His black hair was slicked back, save for a single strand that fell over his forehead. The newcomer smiled, his tone smooth and practiced. "It's okay, Toza, they're with me." Korra immediately latched onto the lie. "Yep, we're with him," she said, nodding enthusiastically. Naruto, on the other hand, didn't bother hiding his amusement. He smirked, knowing the older man wouldn't bother testing the pro-bender's story. Toza grumbled, waving them off, "Whatever, just get out of here." The trio didn't waste any time leaving the gym. Once outside, Korra turned to their unexpected savior with a grateful smile. "Thanks for the help back there." Naruto nodded in agreement, grinning. "Yeah, pretty sure we'd have been thrown out if it weren't for you." The young man waved them off, "No problem. Though, to be fair, Toza's not that fast, you could have outrun him. Security, not so much." Naruto chuckled, finding himself liking the guy. His laid-back demeanor reminded him of the strong, easygoing people he'd known in his past. "So," the pro-bender said, glancing between them with a sly smile, "how long have you two been together?" Naruto froze, his face falling into a deadpan expression. Korra, meanwhile, flushed bright red, her words tripping over themselves as she tried to respond. "What? No," Korra said quickly, almost glowing as she tried to find her words. We are just, the girl looked to Naruto for help, we are friends, right? Naruto paused for a moment, not expecting to be called the girl's friend. He gave a smirk before responding, making Korra smile a bit. Wow, would it be that bad if we were dating, he said teasingly, his remark making Korra blush just a bit more, while the pro-bender laughed to himself. Eventually, the three arrived at their destination, a spacious locker room that opened toward the pro-bending arena. The front wall had large openings, providing a clear view of the platform surrounded by shallow water. The arena itself was suspended far enough from the stands to create a dramatic drop, though not high enough to cause serious injury in the event of a fall. Above the platform, the stands loomed in a circular formation, ensuring the crowd had a perfect view of the action below. The entire setup gave the arena an electric energy, even without the cheers of a full audience. Naruto took a moment to absorb the sight, immediately deciding Korra had been right. This sport looked incredible. His eyes gleamed with anticipation, eager to see it all in action. Korra, on the other hand, was completely entranced. She stood at the opening, staring at the arena with wide, gleeful eyes. Damn, Korra muttered under her breath, turning back to the pro-bender with a wide grin. The boy stood proudly, arms crossed as he glanced between Korra and Naruto. Welcome to the best seats in the house, he said with a grin, name's Bolin, by the way. Naruto smirked, already liking Bolin's easygoing vibe. The blonde looked back at the arena, imagining the battles that would unfold here. If nothing else, this was bound to be fun, and hopefully, it would help Korra loosen up a bit as she worked toward mastering airbending. Korra, however, was too captivated by her surroundings to stick with the conversation. She wandered away from Bolin and Naruto, exploring the space with curiosity written all over her face. Naruto didn't follow, instead hanging back and keeping a casual eye on her just in case. What Naruto didn't notice right away was the arrival of two other pro-benders in matching uniforms. When he turned to Bolin, he was surprised to see another teen with black hair and a leaner build, standing next to a taller, lanky player who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. The lean boy, who bore a striking resemblance to Bolin, crossed his arms and sighed. Bolin, didn't I tell you to stop bringing fans into the locker room? You've gotta quit doing this. The two brothers spoke in hushed tones, but Naruto's sharp hearing caught every word. Come on, Mako, Bolin replied, trying to placate him. I kinda promised them they could stay and watch, plus, I can tell there's something special about that girl. Naruto raised a mental eyebrow at the comment. Did Bolin already suspect Korra was the Avatar, or was he just really observant? Mako looked unimpressed, his sharp eyes briefly glancing toward Naruto. And what about that guy? He asked flatly. Oh, him, he's chill, Bolin said with a shrug, he's with her. Well, not like that, but he's cool, so he's here too. Mako sighed again, clearly unenthused, but before he could argue further, Bolin turned and gestured for Korra and Naruto to come over. Once they approached, Bolin motioned to his brother, his grin as bright as ever. This is my brother, Mako. Mako's expression, however, was far from welcoming. He gave them a blank look, clearly less than thrilled about the newcomers. Korra's excitement was undeterred. Her voice bubbled with energy as she addressed him. You're Mako, I heard you playing on the radio a few nights ago, you were a Motsi. Before she could finish, Mako turned and walked away, slipping on his helmet and heading to the platform that led to the battlefield. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the curt behavior but said nothing. Meanwhile, Korra's enthusiasm deflated, her confusion plain on her face. I guess, I can meet him later, she said, her voice trailing off. Boland gave her a sheepish smile as he adjusted his helmet and arm straps. Don't take it personally. He just gets super focused before a match, you'll get to meet him properly once it's over. Naruto chuckled softly, watching as Boland joined his brother and the third teammate on the platform. Korra, though still a bit puzzled by Mako's cold demeanor, finally took a seat, her attention shifting to the match about to unfold. Whatever disappointment she felt was quickly replaced by anticipation as the three pro-benders took their positions. For Korra, this was a moment she'd dreamed of for far too long. The arena was alive with energy, the crowd's cheers rumbling like a distant storm. Naruto leaned against the railing near Korra, taking in the scene. The bright lights glinted off the metallic surface of the pro-bending platform, and the shallow water surrounding it shimmered faintly, ready to catch any unlucky players who fell. Naruto smirked. This sport was every bit as chaotic as Korra had described, and judging by the intensity in her eyes, she was in her element just watching it. The fire ferrets stood at their starting positions, the tension thick enough to slice through. Shiro Shinobi's commentary boomed over the speakers. The rookie ferrets came from out of nowhere and have made it further than anyone expected this season. But tonight, they face their toughest test yet, folks. The opening bell rang, and chaos erupted. Naruto's eyes sharpened as he watched the Tigardillos waste no time unleashing their bending. Fire blasts, water arcs, and flying earth discs crisscrossed the platform like a symphony of destruction. Korra leaned forward, nearly bouncing on her heels. "Come on, ferrets," she shouted, her voice lost in the roar of the crowd. Naruto glanced at her, suppressing a grin. He could feel her excitement radiating off her like a second sun. This sport's got her hooked. Mako moved with precision, dodging attacks with an almost unnerving calmness. He retaliated with sharp, calculated fire blasts, his face a mask of focus. Shiro Shinobi's voice narrated every moment, adding drama to the already tense atmosphere, and they're off. The two teams waste no time trying to blast each other out of Zone 1. Mako shows off his trademark, cool under fire style. Naruto studied Mako closely. There was something methodical about the guy. Every movement, every strike, was deliberate. He wasn't flashy like Boland, who dodged and countered with sheer athleticism. Or chaotic like Hasuke, who was barely holding his own. Mako's efficiency reminded Naruto of a veteran shinobi. Still, the Tigardillos weren't pulling any punches. Their coordinated attacks pushed the ferrets back into Zone 2, and a 1-2 combo sent Boland and Hasuke sprawling. "Damn," Naruto muttered under his breath, watching as Korra clutched her head in despair. He glanced at the scoreboard. If they keep taking hits like this, they're toast. The round ended with the Tigardillos dominating, and Mako wasted no time calling out Hasuke. "Come on, Hasuke, get your act together." Naruto narrowed his eyes. He wasn't sure if Hasuke was cracking under the pressure or if he was just outmatched, but either way, it didn't look good. Mako's gonna have to carry this team at this rate. The second round began, and Naruto's interest peaked as the fire ferrets fought back. Boland, despite his usual goofy demeanor, was an earth-bending powerhouse, sending Tigardillo players flying with well-placed discs. Even Hasuke managed to land a few solid hits, and Mako capitalized on every opening. The fire ferrets cinched the round in the closing seconds. "It's one apiece, still anyone's match as we go into the third and final round," Shiro Shinobi announced. Naruto smirked, feeling a flicker of pride for the underdogs. "Not bad," he muttered, his eyes darting to Korra, who was grinning ear to ear. The final round started, and things quickly went south. Hasuke and Boland collided after a misstep, giving the Tigardillos an opening to knock them both out of the arena. "Oh no," Korra groaned, clutching her head. Naruto sighed. Looks like it's all on Mako now, he said, his tone even. And Mako delivered. Naruto couldn't help but respect the guy's grit as he dodged and countered with flawless precision, enduring the 3-on-1 assault without losing his cool. He's bobbing and weaving, he's weaving and bobbing, Shiro Shinobi exclaimed. But he's not hitting back. Naruto frowned, leaning forward slightly. What's the plan here, Mako? Then it clicked. Mako wasn't attacking because he didn't need to, he was letting the Tigardillos exhaust themselves. It was a risky strategy, but if anyone could pull it off, it was him. When Mako finally went on the offensive, it was explosive. His firebending was relentless, taking out one Tigardillo player after another. Naruto's eyes widened as Mako emerged from a cloud of dust, a fireball blazing in his hand. He landed a final, decisive strike that sent the last Tigardillo flying into the water. The bell rang, signaling the end of the match. Shiro Shinobi's voice boomed triumphantly, "It's a knockout, what a wingdinger of a hat trick, folks. Mako pulls off the upset of the season, winning the match for the Fire Ferrets." The crowd erupted, and Naruto chuckled under his breath. "Guess that guy's more impressive than I thought," he muttered. Korra was practically vibrating with excitement. Her cheers echoing through the arena. Naruto crossed his arms, a small smile tugging at his lips. Watching her finally have a taste of freedom made matches end that much better. Yeah, this sport's not half bad, he thought, his gaze shifting back to the victorious Fire Ferrets. Not bad at all. Once the team returned, Mako didn't waste any time tearing into Hasuke. It was hard for Naruto to watch, but given the way Hasuke had played, it was a bit understandable. The fight didn't last long. With fury in his eyes, Hasuke threw his helmet to the ground before storming off, no words exchanged after Mako's heated tirade. Gritting his teeth, Mako was clearly under a lot of pressure. The rookie team must have had it tough, especially with all the work they had to put in. But despite the tension in the air, Korra's confidence and excitement remained unchanged as she walked up to him. "You guys were incredible out there," she called out, looking from Mako to Bolin and back again. "Especially you, Mr. Hat Trick." Mako didn't respond immediately. Instead, he focused on removing his helmet and putting away his gear. "Oh, you're still here," he said coldly, brushing her off with just a few words. Naruto scowled, his respect for Mako dropping. He was starting to remind him of Sasuke, and that was definitely not helping Mako's case in Naruto's eyes. "Oh, you're still an ass," Korra shot back sharply, causing Bolin to snicker in the background. Mako didn't respond, but it was as if he could feel the weight of Korra's glare before she turned away, finally easing the tension. "Anyway," Korra continued, turning to Bolin with a quick motion, "I've been immersed in bending my entire life, but I never learned how to move like that." She crossed her arms, a grin forming. "It's like there's a whole new style here. Think you could show me a few tricks?" Bolin mirrored her smile. But a hint of confusion flashed across his face. "Sure, but I don't know how that would translate to your water bending," he said. A smile tugged at Naruto's lips, realizing the two pro-benders still didn't know about Korra's true identity. A similar grin spread across Korra's face, and Naruto could tell she'd decided to have a little fun with them. "Oh, no worries," she said casually, "I'm actually an earthbender." Bolin's expression faltered, and he scratched the back of his head sheepishly. "My bad, I just assumed with your water tribe getup that you were, a water tribe gal." Korra smirked, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "You're right, I'm a water bender, and a fire bender." Bolin raised an eyebrow, clearly confused. Mako's eyes widened in realization. "Okay, yeah, now I'm a bit confused," Bolin said, his tone level, though his skepticism was evident. You're the Avatar, and I'm an idiot, Mako muttered, his head dropping in a moment of embarrassed realization. Both are true, Naruto chimed in, his smirk mirroring Korra's. Bolan's eyes went wide. What? He exclaimed, and Korra let out a small, amused laugh. After that, the group moved to the gym, where Bolan began teaching Korra how to fling the earth discs while Mako and Naruto took a seat together, silently watching. The silence stretched until Mako's voice sliced through it, directed at Naruto with no other sound around them. So, Mako began, clearly unsure of what to say as they watched Korra's training. How is it dating the Avatar? Naruto didn't even glance at Mako, his eyes still locked on Korra as she effortlessly flung 2 earth discs with precision. We aren't dating, he replied with a light laugh, his tone casual. So, she's your friend, Mako pressed, clearly grasping for a topic. Naruto paused, then turned to Mako with a grin. I wouldn't say that, it's more like I'm helping her get out of her shell. His smile faltered as a darker thought crossed his mind. His earlier calm, collected demeanor shifted with a flash of pain when an image of Sasuke appeared uninvited. I'm only saying this because you remind me of an old friend, Naruto continued, voice quieter now. I've learned not to trust people too quickly. I've only known Korra for about 2 days. He looked away, his smile returning as if to dismiss the moment of vulnerability. Doesn't mean I don't respect her, she's a promising Avatar, especially with what I've seen. Mako raised an eyebrow, studying Naruto closely. There was a flicker of confusion on his face. Trying to figure out the rapid shift in the blonde's mood. What he couldn't figure out was whether Naruto was faking it all. But he wasn't. The smile on Naruto's face was genuine, even if the brief pain of remembering Sasuke had caught him off guard. That doesn't explain why you're here, though, Mako said, his voice guarded now. You've already pushed her, why stick around? Naruto's grin turned playful, his mood shifting back to teasing as he turned toward Mako with a curious look. Why are you asking so many questions about Korra? Don't tell me you've got a crush on her after just meeting her. Mako's eyes narrowed at the teasing, his expression unwavering. Naruto's attempt to get a rise out of him didn't work. Damn, you really are like him, Naruto muttered absently, his teasing tone fading into something a little more frustrated. At least you're a bit more laid back. Mako didn't respond immediately, but he wasn't sure whether that comment was an insult or just an observation. He could see the annoyance in Naruto's eyes, the way his expression shifted from playful to something else entirely. It wasn't often someone got under Mako's skin like this, and for some reason, Naruto was doing it without even trying. Mako let out a short sigh, catching Naruto's attention with the subtle motion. You opened up first, so what comes next is your fault, he muttered. Naruto turned back to Mako, a confused expression on his face. Before he could ask what Mako meant, the other boy continued. I asked all those questions because I was trying to gauge yours and Korra's personalities. Like you said, you can't trust anyone in Republic City too quickly. Naruto raised an eyebrow, his frown deepening at Mako's words. Was the city really that bad? Hadn't peace come about in the future? The thought of a corrupted Republic City didn't sit well with him. I do it with most people, Mako went on, his gaze shifting to the floor, as if lost in thought. I have to make sure me and Bolan stay safe. The higher-ups in this city would never admit it, but this place isn't perfect, it's far from it. A brief silence settled between them. Naruto turned away for a moment, the gears turning in his mind. Then, a smile slowly crept back onto his face. Mako was definitely better than Sasuke, at least in terms of loyalty. They both even had that fire-style thing going for them. Naruto patted Mako's shoulder, catching him off guard, but the blonde kept his smile as he spoke. I get it, I guess we have some things in common when it comes to new people, so at least we can trust each other to a point. Mako raised an eyebrow, a slight smirk tugging at his lips. So what, you wanna be my friend? Naruto shook his head, his grin widening. Not necessarily, at least, not yet. I'm saying we can trust each other for now, but friendship, that might come later. Mako chuckled, shaking his head. Good, 'cause you're weird, and I don't think I can get used to that too quickly. Naruto laughed to himself, the tension easing. The two turned back to watch Korra, who had just pulled off a perfect sidestep before sending 2 discs into the net with precision. Wow, nice adjustment, Bolin called out, grinning as he watched the discs settle into the net. You're a natural. Not bad, Mako added flatly. Naruto knew he was trying to be nice, but it came off as distant. Mako was just never great at hiding his true feelings. Korra didn't let it slide this time, but in a playful manner. Wow, what does it take to impress this guy? She asked aloud, throwing a teasing glance at Mako before turning to Naruto as if expecting an answer. I mean, really, you must know by now. You two had so much time to talk. Naruto shrugged, a smirk on his face, while Mako scowled. You're kidding, right? I said. Not bad. Mako shook his head, getting to his feet with his usual unreadable expression. It's getting late, I'm going to turn in. You kids have fun, Bolin, I'll meet you upstairs. Korra raised an eyebrow. Upstairs, you guys live here? She asked, glancing at Bolin. The pro bender nodded. Yeah, we get a good view up in the attic, but it's nothing special. Now, back to bending. For the rest of the night, Naruto watched as Korra and Bolin practiced earthbending. As he observed their movements, his mind wandered. He thought about how different their bending styles were from one another, and how vastly different they were from the jutsu he'd known. It sparked a curiosity in him. How would a bender fare against a shinobi? The principles behind their powers were so different. He couldn't help but wonder how the two would clash. When the sun finally began to rise, Bolin left, leaving Korra and Naruto to head back to Air Temple Island. Korra was exhausted, and Naga was, too, but Naruto once again walked effortlessly on the water, his mind still racing with thoughts of bending and jutsu. Once the two woke up in the afternoon, it was time for more airbending training for Korra. Clad in the same airbending outfit she had worn before, Korra steadied herself in front of the spinning fans, mentally preparing for another round of frustrating attempts. Naruto stood next to Tenzen and his children, eyeing Korra as she stepped up to the fans. He'd seen her improve since training with Bolin, her confidence growing as she mastered the moves of probending. But airbending was a different beast, one she couldn't control with sheer force and willpower alone. He had faith in her, but he knew this was going to be a tough day. Korra took a deep breath, focused on the spinning fans, and stepped forward. She seemed lighter, more fluid in her movements, almost free, but then a gust of wind hit her, knocking her off balance. The fans continued to batter her, and frustration quickly turned to rage. She snapped, firing off a blast of fire bending that immediately set the fans ablaze. The area fell silent. Korra stood, panting heavily, watching as the last of the smoldering fans crumbled to the ground. Her face was a mask of frustration and anger, her hands balled into fists at her sides. Tenzen's face went red with anger. He clenched his jaw, his hands twitching at his sides as he turned to face Korra. What is wrong with you? He exploded, his voice harsh and full of frustration. That was a 2,000-year-old relic. Do you have any idea what you've just done? The words hit Korra like a slap. She stood her ground, her anger flaring up in return. What's wrong with me? She shot back, her voice rising to match his. I've been trying to make this work, but nothing is clicking. nothing is happening. And you, she pointed an accusatory finger toward him, you just stand there telling me to be patient while I keep failing over and over again. Tenzen's breath quickened as he took a step toward her. You can't force this, Korra. Airbending requires patience, it takes time. You can't just force it. His voice was harsh now, a mix of anger and desperation. Korra's face tightened with frustration, her fists shaking at her sides. She had been trying to meet his expectations, and each time she failed, it felt like a failure to herself. I am trying, Tenzen, but you just don't get it, do you? Her voice cracked with emotion as she continued, maybe it's not me, maybe you're just a terrible teacher. Without another word, Korra turned on her heel and stormed off, her footsteps heavy as she exited the training area. The place was thick with silence. Milo, who had been watching the exchange with a blank grin, suddenly rushed towards Tenzen. Yeah, Daddy, you're a terrible teacher, he repeated, clearly not understanding all that had happened. Tenzen didn't seem to hear him, his gaze remained fixed on the path Korra had just exited through, his fists clenched at his sides. The anger that had bubbled up during the argument didn't subside, it only intensified, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Naruto watched the scene with a tight expression, knowing how much Korra's outburst must have hurt Tenzen. He felt bad for both of them. Korra's frustrations were understandable, she had been trying so hard, and failure after failure could break anyone's spirit. But Tenzen wasn't used to being yelled at. He was a man of structure and discipline, and Korra's words stung. The air between everyone was tense. Naruto shifted his weight, unsure of how to intervene. It was clear that Tenzen needed time to cool down, and Korra would need space to process everything. I'm going to talk to her, Naruto said quietly, glancing at Tenzen before stepping toward the path Korra took. Tenzen didn't respond at first, his jaw still clenched. He simply stood there, lost in thought. Naruto hesitated for a moment before adding, she's just frustrated, it's not easy for her. Tenzen finally looked up at him, his expression softer now. I know, he replied quietly. But sometimes, frustration leads to destruction, and we can't afford any more of that. Naruto nodded. I'll make sure she calms down, you don't need to worry about that right now. With that, Naruto stepped away to find Korra, leaving Tenzen to stand in the quiet aftermath of the argument. It didn't take long to find her, he'd guessed there was only one place she would be at this time, he just hoped he would catch her before she had inevitably decided to go to Republic City. From what he knew of the girl, after just getting a taste of freedom, and including her emotional state, she would leave to find comfort in the only thing she currently had. With a bit of chakra, the blonde launched himself onto the roof. He walked with purpose, but didn't move too quickly, as he could already see the person he was looking for. Korra sat on the same rooftop they had visited the night before, her legs dangling over the edge as she stared out at the horizon. The city stretched far into the distance, bustling with life even from this height. She had her arms crossed, her posture stiff, radiating frustration and anger. Naruto approached quietly, not wanting to startle her. You know, he said casually, sitting down a few feet away, for someone who keeps saying they're done, you sure don't look like you're done with anything. Korra didn't respond immediately. She kept her eyes on the horizon, her brows furrowed. What do you want, Naruto? She muttered, her tone sharp but tired. Just thought I'd check on you. He replied, leaning back on his hands as he looked at her. You know, make sure you're not plotting to set the whole island on fire or something. That earned him a half-smile, though it quickly disappeared. I'm not in the mood for jokes, she said softly, her tone losing some of its bite. That's fine, Naruto said, shifting his gaze to the city lights. He stayed quiet for a moment, giving her space. You know, I get it, he finally said. Feeling like you're not good enough, like no matter how hard you try, you're still not getting anywhere, it sucks. Korra's eyes flicked toward him for a second before she looked away again. It's more than that, she admitted, her voice wavering. I've trained my whole life to be the Avatar, to master all the elements, but airbending. It's like I'm hitting a wall I can't break through. And Tenzen, he doesn't get it, he just keeps telling me to be patient, like that's supposed to fix everything. What if I never get it? I would be the worst Avatar in the history of ever. Naruto nodded, letting her vent. Patience isn't easy, he said after a moment. Especially when you're used to charging straight at your problems and punching them in the face. But sometimes, it's not about forcing your way through. Sometimes you have to find another way. Another way, Korra repeated, glancing at him with a skeptical look. And what's that supposed to mean? Naruto shrugged. Look, I'm no airbender, but maybe you're trying too hard to make airbending work like the other elements. It's not about being strong or fast, it's about being flexible, finding the flow. He paused, a small smile forming. Kind of like what Bolin was teaching you, to stay light on your feet. Korra's brow furrowed. What does pro-bending have to do with airbending? Nothing, Naruto said confidently. But it has a lot to do with you. You weren't thinking about rules or techniques when we're being taught. You just moved, you let yourself be free. And it worked. Maybe you need to stop thinking of airbending as something you have to conquer and start seeing it as something you can flow with. Korra frowned, processing his words. That sounds annoyingly like something Tenzen would say, she muttered, though her tone was lighter. Naruto laughed. Yeah, but the difference is, I'm not going to yell at you about ancient relics while I say it. Korra smirked despite herself. Shaking her head, you're impossible. And you're stubborn, Naruto shot back, grinning. But that's not a bad thing, stubborn people tend to figure things out eventually. Korra let out a long sigh, some of the tension in her shoulders easing. She didn't say anything for a while, just sitting there as the cool breeze swept over the rooftop. Finally, she spoke. Thanks Naruto, I needed that. He smiled, his tone steady. Anytime, Korra. Just remember, you're not in this alone. You've got me, Tenzen, and a whole group of people who believe in you. You'll figure it out, eventually. Korra nodded, a small but determined smile breaking through. Yeah, I will. Naruto stood up, brushing the dust off his pants. Alright, come on, let's head to the bending arena. Didn't Bolin say their match starts around this time? Korra shot him a side eye, her confusion clear. Wait, didn't you just give me this whole pep talk about not giving up? Shouldn't I be trying again instead of running off to watch a match? Naruto chuckled, his grin growing. I know you'd much rather clear your head with something you actually enjoy, like watching bending you already understand. Korra frowned but couldn't hide the way her shoulders relaxed. You're not wrong, she admitted, only for him to cut her off before she could say more. And let's be real, he said, pointing at her with mock seriousness, it's written all over your face that you're definitely not ready to go back and face Tenzen yet. She gave him a mock glare but quickly sighed, shaking her head. It's crazy how you can see through me like that, she muttered. Meanwhile, the only things I know about you are that you're annoying and a waterbender. Naruto grinned wider at that. First of all, still not a waterbender. Second of all, we're gonna miss the match if we don't get moving, let's go. Korra rolled her eyes but followed, a reluctant smile creeping onto her face. As the two of them made their way off the rooftop, a spark of excitement replaced her earlier frustration. For now, the pressure of airbending could wait. The two made their way to Republic City, much as they had before, though this time, Korra opted to swim rather than take Naga. She said it was faster, though Naruto suspected it was more about burning off leftover frustration. They sneaked into the arena the same way they had last time, weaving through unnoticed until they found themselves in a locker room. Inside, they came across Mako and Bolin, but Naruto's sharp eyes quickly noticed that Hasuke was missing. He also caught the way Bolin was holding his arm, the subtle wince he gave when he moved. Something wasn't right. Korra, oblivious to the tension, waved cheerfully. "Hey Mako, Bolin," she greeted, though her expression quickly shifted into a frown as she took in their defeated demeanor. "Wait, did we miss the match? You guys look like you just got your butts kicked." Bolin's cheerful face fell further at her words, while Mako's eyes narrowed, his frustration practically radiating off him. "We might as well have lost," he muttered, leaning against a locker with his arms crossed. Naruto stepped forward, his gaze flickering between the brothers before settling on Bolin's arm. "What happened?" he asked, his voice calm but serious. "Bolin looks hurt." "I'm fine," Bolin said quickly, though the strain in his voice betrayed him. "No, you're not," Mako snapped, his tone sharp. "Not with what Hasuke did to you." Naruto's eyes narrowed at that, his stance stiffening. "Explain," he demanded, his voice low and steady but laced with authority. Mako sighed, avoiding Naruto's gaze for a moment before meeting Chorus and finally settling on the blonde. "Hasuke quit the team," he began, his voice tight with frustration. "When we tried to confront him about it, he turned on us. Things got heated, and Bolin got hurt in the scuffle. Now I'm down 2 teammates, and the match is about to start. I'm thinking we might as well call it quits." Bolin's face twisted into a determined glare, though it lacked the edge to make it threatening. "I told you, I'm fine," he argued, turning toward Mako. "We don't need 2 replacements, we just need 1. I'm not letting you go out there and get yourself hurt worse," Mako snapped back, his tone final. Before the argument could escalate further, a voice cut through the tension, echoing into the locker room. "Last call for the fire ferrets, are you ready?" Mako tensed at the sound, his frustration clear. "No, we're not ready," he growled, "we don't have a team." Naruto's eyes softened, his mind trying to think of a way to help, but not able to find one, especially in the time crunch. They needed experienced players, to help them, players that would probably be on their own team, trying to win this tournament. There was just no way that would happen, so reluctantly, the blonde needed to tell them there wasn't anything they could do, and they should focus on getting Bolin back to full strength. Naruto opened his mouth to say something, but Korra stepped in first, her expression lighting up with excitement. "Wait a second," she said, a grin spreading across her face. "Why not let us help?" Naruto blinked at her, caught off guard. "Huh?" That was the exact opposite of what he wanted. Being in the spotlight in this new world was not something he was ready for, and it definitely wasn't something he wanted to try. "You and me," Korra said, turning to Naruto as if the plan were already set in stone. "We can join the team." Mako and Bolin both looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "What are you talking about?" Mako asked with a frown. "You can't just jump into pro bending out of nowhere." Korra shrugged, unbothered. "Why not? I've been training my whole life, and Naruto here is," she paused, glancing at him for a second before continuing, "a natural at water bending." Naruto raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms. "You're volunteering me for this now?" Korra gave him a nudge with her elbow. "Come on, don't act like you're not curious. You did say you wouldn't be scared if you were to join in. Besides, that walking on water trick is really impressive, you've got to have more than that." Naruto looked at her for a long moment. The girl wasn't wrong, he had other water jutsu, but he didn't know exactly how to scale into bending. Sure, He could do jutsu with one hand sign no problem, along with extra shape and transformation manipulation to make his own jutsu. A few years of training allowed him to do so. But bending had changed since he last fought someone who had it. He was still rusty. After all, it had only been 3 days since his release. But as he looked at Korra, he knew nothing would change her mind. It was the same look he had given to certain people back when he first became a shinobi. Naruto gave a sigh, shaking his head with a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. "Fine, but if this ends with me flat on my back, I'm blaming you." "Deal," Korra said, already pulling him toward the equipment rack. She grabbed 2 sets of gear and tossed one at him. Wait, Mako interrupted, his hands raised. "Do you even know how to play?" Korra grinned, "Nope, but how hard can it be?" Naruto groaned, already regretting his decision. "This is gonna be a disaster." "Trust me, I've got this," Korra said confidently, already donning her gear. Naruto muttered under his breath, famous last words. Mako pinched the bridge of his nose but, realizing they had no other options, finally relented. "Fine, but don't get in the way." With that, the Fire Ferrets' new team stepped out of the locker room. Chorus excitement buzzing in the air, while Naruto braced himself for whatever chaos was about to unfold. Once the 3 arrived on the platform, the announcer's voice called out. "Looks like the Fire Ferrets have ferreted out a last-minute replacement waterbender and earthbender. Let's see if they are diamonds in the rough like the brothers from the School of Hard Knocks." Mako's eyes tensed as he looked towards the platypus bears. The other team seemed to grin, almost menacingly. Mako then side-eyed his 2 new teammates, frowning to himself. "Don't do anything too fancy or aggressive, you two. In fact, don't do anything." Naruto just rolled his eyes, wanting to be somewhere else, while Korra gave a smile. "You got it, Captain," Korra said jokingly, before readjusting her helmet. Naruto looked closely at the other team, as he got into his own fighting stance. His left arm was placed low, bent and to his stomach, while his right was held in an angle, protecting his face. He held a wide stance, his guard up as muscle memory began to kick in. His unpredictable style surely would be able to take the other team down. "Players, are you ready?" the announcer called out, causing both teams to tense. Everyone waited, including the crowd, as suspense filled the air. The short second felt like hours, before a whistle blew, breaking the silence. Before anyone else had a chance to think, Korra moved quickly, doing a 1-2 shot with the earth discs, knocking one of the other team's members off the side. Hearing the loud scream and a plop of water, Korra celebrated her victory with a small dance. However, she stopped when the ref called her out for the illegal move. "Fire Ferret Earthbender, penalty, move back 1 zone." Korra looked up at this, while Naruto and Mako just turned to her, one with confusion, the other with annoyance. "What? Why?" she shouted quickly, confusion plain on her face as she held her arms out in a T pose. "You're only allowed to knock players off the back of the ring, not over the sides," Mako answered frustratedly, his voice almost biting out the answer. Korra quickly recoiled at this, letting out a small "oh" before the game started again. "And we're back after that hiccup, but I'm not so sure this replacement player knows what she's doing." Naruto quickly readied himself, keeping his stance as a bell rung. He did a quick hand sign, ram, to control the water in the openings of the ring, and send them forward as a turret. A small geyser of water shot up, clumping to get her into a ball, before letting out multiple water bullets. Water style, cascading bullets, Naruto thought in his head, as the attack raged on. The bullets weren't as fast as they could be. He had to make sure not to overdo it and make everyone think he was just some water bender. He put the bullets at about bellow half strength, what he thought was enough to knock someone off the end if they weren't careful. Unfortunately, while most the bullets hit their target. The team's earthbender, he was strong enough to keep his stance. But for some reason he didn't target Naruto. Instead, he went right for Korra without a second thought. Korra pulled up an earth disc, sending it flying to the other team's firebender, but unexpectedly to her, an earth disc came towards her side right as she let it off. The girl came to a halt, before spinning in the air and kicking upward, causing 2 earth discs to block 2 more shots. But when she landed, she touched the end line to the next zone, causing the ref to yell out, "Foul," and send her to the last zone. Mako and Naruto looked to each other for a second, they both gave a subtle nod to each other, before focusing again. But as they readied, suddenly the round was ended, the timer for it having gone off with all the stops and starts. Annoyedly Mako looked at Korra, who only gave a sheepish look in return. A blue tube near the stands lights up, causing Naruto to frown. They were already 1 round down, so they had to work harder to make sure this wasn't a 3-0 game. The announcer's voice calls out once more, making Naruto a bit annoyed. "The platypus bears take round 1, he said as if Naruto didn't already know that. This made the blonde scowl a bit, as the next round starts. Immediately all 3 players on the opposite team began to focus their attacks on Korra, only giving her small chances to dodge and then get hit. The platypus bears know a green player when they see one, and they are focusing the brunt of their bending on this poor girl, called the announcer. Korra began to get assaulted by all the elements, an earth disc hitting her chest, before she had to dodge a water whip. Naruto back-flipped to her side, flashing the ram seal again, making a water wall in front of her. He then let it go down, before throwing it up one final time, changing the jutsu into something new. The water wall began to twist, before turning to a rush of water that hit the opposing team's fire bender back to the next zone. The blonde then dodged an earth disc before moving back to his spot. However, right when he did this, more elements began to pummel Korra. When she got away from the turret of water, a few fire blasts made themselves known to her. She managed to block one with an earth disc, before getting hit by the other, and right when she had begun to think it was over, all 3 elements came in at once. Naruto tried to keep the heat off her by using some low-level water jutsu, but it didn't take the attention away from the girl. With a low grunt, and a grit of her teeth, Korra watched the incoming attacks. She then rushed her hands up into the air, creating a similar water wall to Naruto's, catching all of the elements in it, before blasting them back. Just like that, the announcer came in. "Wait a minute, did that earthbender just water bend?" The crowd looked shocked, a few whispers being heard in the silence as they all had their eyes on Korra. Even some gasps could be heard as they began to realize who Korra was. The ref came in not long after, blowing his whistle to get the 2 teams' attention. "Foul, I think." Korra could only smile in anticipation, as she realized what she had done. "I can't believe my eyes, do you see what I am seeing?" crowed the Avatar. "That girl is the Avatar, and she is playing pro bending." After a short consideration, the Avatar is permitted to play, but she must only use earth bending for the time being. Naruto and Korra both let out a sigh of relief, before focusing back on the game. But as Naruto looked forward, he could tell the other team wasn't pleased. Once the match began, it was the same plan. The other team began pummeling Korra once more. With each element they knocked her around, until she finally fell off the edge while Naruto could only watch. The blonde even saw Tenzen as the girl swam to get on the elevator. He must have found them from the radio. This place wasn't exactly silent about the girl being the Avatar. Now, him and Mako stood their ground in the first zone, watching closely for any attacks that would come. As if the other team sensed Naruto was new as well, they quickly turned all their attacks towards him. Naruto dodged earth, fire and water, his unpredictable spins, turns, kicks and flips, making it easy for him to keep himself on the move. Not one element was able to touch him, but it wasn't like Mako could take those three guys on alone. Naruto dodged one last lick of fire, before spinning and pivoting back into a ram seal. Most people by now had noticed how he had formed that hand sign whenever he used jutsu. But the chalked it up to skill when he was able to make water move with just a flick of his fingers. Water style, moving wall, he thought to himself, moving ever so slightly to get out the way of fire and earth discs. Once enough water built up, a wave of water formed, small enough to the point where he was sure he wouldn't get fouled for it. The water then blocked incoming attacks, and pushed onward, making the earthbender go to the last zone. Naruto smirked, as he readied himself for quick fire attacks, nodding toward Mako one time. The jet black-haired boy nodded back, and moved in with turrets of fire. Naruto did the same, casually dodging attacks and sending out water jutsu like it was nothing. Unfortunately, the platypus bears still won the round, as the two were unable to knock any of them off. So now the match was 2-0, and Korra came back to her teammates with a guilty frown. "You're in trouble?" Naruto asked, with Korra quickly nodding. "Yep, I'm so dead when this match ends." The blonde chuckled slightly, but his attention was quickly taken when the match started. This time, he had tried to help Korra block the attacks coming her way, but the earth and water bender kept him and Mako at bay, generating waves of water to push them to the net, just enough to not throw them off. While the earthbender made sure Naruto couldn't put up the ram sign. Damn it, Naruto thought, sure, he could flick up a hand seal at sonic speeds, but underestimating the other team had gotten him trapped, without a clear way to get out. Maybe if had taken this a bit more serious, he could win purely with water style. Especially since he noticed that jutsu had a but more freedom in what they could make. Meanwhile, Korra was feeling the heat. Literally, she is getting hit by multiple fire attacks at once, and is near the edge of the platform. Another attack struck her in her shoulder, making her grit her teeth before another fire blow hit her back, almost making her fall into the water bellow. Somehow, she was able to keep her balance. Once back in her stance, she gave a huff, and at that moment, it was like a switch was flipped. Korra began to dodge the attacks in a spinning motion, turning from fire bolts every so often, not one being able to touch her as she moved. However, heat did move on her. Heat of the red-hot flames was familiar to the point that its warmth was enough to warn her where the next attack was going to come from. Korra kept up her dodging, its airbender-like motion making even Naruto smile under attack. And her other two teammates stayed pushed back on the rail, making sure they hadn't been pushed off the side, as it didn't seem like the two benders weren't okay with fouling. But after a long while of dodging and waiting, the platypus bears were finally tired out. That's when the fire ferrets moved. Finally, Naruto made a ram hand seal, making an simple water jet, and guiding it from above to hit the fire bender down. He then switched his attention to the earth bender, flicking up another ram seal, and sending a water blast into his chest. The earth bender was flung out the ring, and not long after, did Mako and Korra step in. Korra sent relentless discs into the water bender, while Mako did the same with fire to the fire bender. And with this, they had finally got a win under their belt. It had actually looked like they could win this as one of the tubes that counted the rounds turned red. And eventually, they did, becoming a team. They pulled through, and stole 2 more wins from underneath the platypus bears, allowing the fire ferrets to go into the championships. And Naruto was sure he had heard a few cheaters from Tenzen before the game had ended. He was sure that once they had gone to the stands, Korra and the air-bending master had made up. Naruto now sat with Tenzen, who looked both annoyed and proud of him at the same time, a strange combination Naruto wasn't sure was even possible. So, Tenzen began, his voice measured but curious, "When were you planning to tell us you were a waterbender?" Naruto let out a short laugh, leaning back lazily. You and Korra with this whole, me being a waterbender, thing, he said, shaking his head. Do you realize how long I've been in that seal? For all you know, I could be the Avatar. The playful smirk on his face made it clear he wasn't being entirely serious, though there was a hint of truth buried in his words. Tenzen blinked, staring at the blonde for a moment before sighing deeply. Whatever you say, Naruto, the airbending master folded his arms, clearly not willing to entertain the joke further. Still, I wanted to thank you. Naruto's playful demeanor shifted slightly, his brow lifting in mild surprise. Thank me, for what? For helping Korra disobey my orders. Tenzen's tone was still calm, but there was a tinge of self-reflection in his words. She told me what you said, and, as much as I hate to admit it, you were right. Korra needed to experience freedom in order to learn. I see that now. Naruto didn't respond immediately, letting the weight of Tenzen's admission settle in. For all his teasing and rebellion, he could tell the older man had struggled to come to terms with this realization. Tenzen continued, his tone softening. I'm letting you and Korra continue to participate in the tournament. I've been too strict with her, and perhaps the White Lotus and I have been wrong in how we've approached protecting the Avatar. Naruto's lips curled into a genuine smile. Wow, Tenzen, didn't think you had it in you to admit something like that. Guess I'm rubbing off on you. Tenzen ignored the jab, his expression serious again, but I want something in return, Naruto. The blonde raised an eyebrow. Oh, what's that? I want you to help with her training, Tenzen said firmly. If you truly understand the balance between freedom and discipline, then you may be able to help her grasp what I haven't been able to teach her yet. Especially with her air bending. Naruto's eyes widened slightly in surprise. He hadn't expected Tenzen to suggest something like this. But after a moment, his shock melted into a grin. Fine, I'll do it, but only because I've got nothing better to do, and, let's be honest, I'm not really the type to sit around meditating all day. Tenzen narrowed his eyes. You're already good at doing whatever you please. You left Air Temple Island once and made it clear you could leave any time you wanted. Yet, you've stayed, that tells me something. Naruto opened his mouth to respond, but Tenzen cut him off. Your first spar with me is tomorrow. I want to see how much this bit of freedom helped her, and how much you can actually teach her. Perhaps then I'll get a better sense of why you could be the Avatar. Naruto froze, his grin slipping as Tenzen's last words hung in the air. His mind raced, but before he could say anything, the airbending master turned and walked away, leaving the blonde alone with his thoughts. Tenzen had struck a nerve, and Naruto knew it. It was clear as day, the old man's suspicions hadn't disappeared, they had only shifted. He had wanted to know more about what the blonde could do. The air nomad told no lies when speaking to the blonde, but what he had done was possibly force Naruto's hand.